you ever come across one of those shows that you think has an interesting premise, you don't expect too much from it, but you give it a shake only to get absolutely blown away? Yeah, this is that kind of show. Created by known theater kid Megan Nicole Dong, Centaurworld is a Netflix exclusive musical that has a lot going for it when it comes to what I like to see in animation. Namely, a strong ongoing narrative, a cast that plays well off of each other, sincere themes, and taking artistic influence from outside of these shows. Not only is this seen in the art style of the human world, but according to the animation industry club stream that I was fortunate enough to catch, so does the eponymous Centaurworld. Some of their influences being the art of Lisa Frank, Amanda Winterstein, and Roger Dean. The latter two are clearly influencing the background art, while the characters from Centaurworld themselves are rendered in a specific style that emulates the markers that the team used to draw out the characters in real life, making their line work noticeably more rough than Horse's clean, sharp, anime-influenced art. Heck, they even got separate animation studios to work on the characters. For the majority of the Centaurs, they went to the Canadian-based Mercury Filmworks, and for the human world characters, they went to the South Korean studio Red Dog Culture House, and looking at their reel, I can tell why. So what about the story and characters? Well, the show's premise is that a horse from the war-torn human world gets tossed into the seemingly bright and cheery Centaur world by the story's MacGuffin. Naturally, she wants to return home to her rider and must do so by collecting pieces of said MacGuffin. What ensues is a surprisingly touching fish-out-of-water story about opening up to others. Normally, I'd save my recommendation for the end of the review, but considering how the rest of this is going to be spoiling the plot of the first season, I'm insisting that you go see it if you have Netflix. Otherwise, let's get into this. Ryder, yes, that's her name in the show, is an exercise in getting the most out of a character with very little screen time. The first major song of the show, Ryder's Lullaby, firmly establishes the caring connection the two have, which shows us why Horse wants to get back to her homeworld, even if it is a barren wasteland. Her design is very solid and really sells how long she's been fighting. Her armor is worn and scratched up. It's got one pauldron replaced with a leather one. Her hair is unkempt and it's pulled back into kind of a ponytail, which also is very thematic for her. Most of her color palette is brown, with the exception of her saturated blue cape, which is rather turned up as well. Her and her world is presented in a heavily anime-influenced style, befitting the action-oriented nature of it. Speaking of action, we also get to see her and Horse fight alongside each other before being torn apart. Overall, I'd say she's very good for what we get. She is a genuinely strong female character, not just in muscle, but where it actually counts. She also plays the straight man to the metric ton of weird at the finale, but we'll get there in due time.
Brutal!
We need to talk about Horse's design before we go into her character, because the two are rather intertwined. When she starts off, she has a very monochromatic palette of desaturated light blues or purples, depending on the lighting. Being a war horse, she's armored up with her saddle and harness, but one tornado tour later and she's stark naked, like everyone else in the show. This coincides with her arc of being able to open up to others and show vulnerability. Eventually, she does warm up to the admittedly wacky herd she travels with. Then, she begins to change physically, starting with her hair. Her once long, sharp, flowing locks become rounded clumps. Then her tail becomes a freaking Muppet that cracks jokes and teaches her the fundamentals of comedy. Yeah, that really happens. The change reaches its peak during episode 7, coupled with her song, Who Is She? It's a lovely song that encapsulates her as a character and is an absolutely stunning display of animation on the part of Red Dog, because it's super anime. Alas, the performance exhausts her anime reserves and turns her into a blob horse. However, this is not the end of her arc. Naturally, with her looking completely different from how she started, she wonders if Ryder will even recognize her, sending her into the Depression Allegory Whale Tar Shaman. She is ultimately brought out of it by Wamawink, we'll get to her. When she and Ryder reunite, we also get a reprise of Ryder's lullaby to remind her that, despite everything, she's still her horse. Like the show itself, Horse is a surprisingly good character. I like that they change her design to go with her arc, which can only mean one thing here in Design Dungeon. That's right.
Super spicy style.
While not as complex as Horse in the first season, Wamawink and her herd are a colorful bunch of characters that play off of Horse and each other very well. Since there are quite a few of them, I'll try to keep things rather brisk. Wamawink has a nice analogous palette of pinks and violets. Making her an alpaca was a very good choice. They have incredibly fluffy fur that's incredibly comfortable, but do not mess with them. Her overprotective tendencies stem from her village being raised in a war that tore up Centaurworld a while back. Not everything is sunshine and rainbows in this world. I love how her and Horse butt heads a lot in the beginning, but not only does she pull Horse out of her sorrow, but also has a hard time saying goodbye to her at the end of their journey. She's a very good character who really brings the show together.
Awesome!
Glendale is one of the more quirky characters, and as such, her design is a bit more complex. Sure, most of her is this analogous palette of purple, pink, and orange, but then BAM! High contrast blue hair. The choice of making her a Guranuk tar is an interesting one. Not too many people use such obscure animals for character design. I found her to be among the funniest of the herd. Her kleptomania easily could have been annoying and a detriment to the main group. However, this character quirk winds up being helpful in the long run. She's also the most expressive of the centaurs with her massive eyes and ears. I love how she'll go into kind of a Muppet mode sometimes. During the stream, they did say that Muppets were a big influence on the characters, and Glendale is a very good example of it.
Awesome!
The Zebrator Zulius is mostly there to play off the other cast. However, he's been shown to know a few things about the world outside the meadow, where the herd lived. He's clearly had a past with the Cator Splendid, and even told Horse about the shamans who can help her on their quest, mostly in spite of Wamawink. His vanity and over-the-top nature makes him a large personality in the herd, and it comes in handy during episode 7, where he really shines.
Brutal!
Durpleton the Giraffe Tar is, well, a character who I really can't get a good read on. Sometimes he's actually rather astute about his surroundings, other times he's very naive. Then there was the time he believed his farts were his father reprimanding him. I got nothing. He's just kind of a string of non-sequiturs, and I really do hope they flesh him out in Season 2, because there's clearly something going on with him. I just have no idea what.
Crazy!
Ched has to be the least engaging member of the herd to me. He's usually pretty abrasive to Horse and the other members. While he does warm up to her, he's mostly there as a grounding force to contrast off of. Maybe he'll bring more to the table in Season 2, but who knows.
Crazy!
Horse's quest takes her to find 5, technically 6, shamans, and they are all very interesting in both design and how they contribute to her character arc. Starting off with Water Baby, the Hippo Shaman is the first shaman that we see, and is the one who sets up the stakes, along with providing some fleshing out for Wamawink, who was originally her apprentice before getting cold feet. That said, she freaking lied to Horse because there is in fact a human that lives on Centaurworld. What are you hiding, Water Baby? There is definitely more to her, but for now, she is getting
brutal.
What the tree tar shamans lack in raw characterization, they make up for in good design and the ability to move the story forward. Their shtick is that they give people what they need and not necessarily what they want. In the end, they give Horse a vision of Wamawing's past and how they really didn't help her, which leads Horse to behead Big Tree and get the next piece of the MacGuffin. It allowed her to get more insight as to why Wamawink is the way that she is, and was just a fairly solid episode.
Awesome!
Of all the shamans, Judge Jacket had the least impact on me. She was your average hanging judge, but at least her character design was interesting, especially in comparison to the other Moltars, what with being a lesser-known species of mole. In all honesty, what made the episode was Horse and her tail, alongside Punished Glendale.
Brutal!
Oh no, oh, he's got a baritone, oh jeez. Oh, we're getting a reprisal of that song, oh boy, we got some foreshadowing up in here.
Awesome!
I mentioned before that the whale tour shaman is the metaphorical depression whale. When Horse is at her lowest point, wondering if her journey is even worth it now that she's no longer how she was, her tears summon the shaman, who offers to take Horse into her stomach, which is an emotionless limbo in the fashion of a tacky cruise line. She absorbs the sorrow of the people in there, but they're not really helped as nobody can come out and live their lives. The sorrow is still there, and simply taking the feeling away won't change it. Ultimately, Horse is brought out by Wamawing, and the shaman does see how she really wasn't helping the people through their problems. Overall, a very good character that tackles a very heavy subject.
Brutal!
You know how I mentioned that Water Baby lied about there not being any humans in Centaurworld? Yeah, this mysterious lady is why. Visually, she reads as a mix between the human world and Centaurworld. She's still very anime-influenced like Ryder, but she has purple hair and violet robes, which are colors more associated with Centaurworld. What's more is that she has very powerful magical abilities, something that only someone who's been in Centaurworld for some time could have. It's clear that there's a lot to her that will likely be fleshed out in the second season. What we are given does allow us to draw conclusions about her, especially her connection to the main villain.
Awesome!
Just what is the Nowhere King? This is a question that, upon your first viewing of Centaurworld, might go unanswered, and to an extent, it likely will be for some time. Many compare him to the Lich from Adventure Time, but I don't see him quite like that. The Lich was a force of nature, the embodiment of decay, still a natural piece of the world. This is something that should not be, something that was twisted and corrupted. It's clear that he and the mysterious woman have a history, and given the final moments of the show, he likely was a centaur at some point. The question remains, is just what corrupted him into what he is? Was it from living in the human world? Or was it from being sealed in the space between worlds that turned him into what he is? I don't know, but what I do know is that I'm very eager to find out.
Super style!
That will do it for Centaurworld. There were a lot of other minor characters that showed up during the journey, so if I didn't cover any, don't worry too much about it. I know they're there and probably C-ranked. After all said and done, Centaurworld was a great Netflix original up there with Kid Cosmic, which is also getting a season 2. I will definitely be looking forward to what's coming next. Until then, I will see you next time on Design Dungeon.
Fresh air! Hoo-wee, it was a real turd circus down there, man! Oh! Hey, guys! Glendale!
We totally remembered and missed you the whole time.
You guys, we did not totally remember and miss her the whole time.
It's on all of us.
We take this
to the grave.